Good morning, Year 5, and welcome to Tuesday's English lesson. Today we're going to write the third paragraph in our stories that we planned last Thursday. They're looking really good so far, so please keep up the fantastic writing. Today's target is going to be looking at writing in complex sentences using commas. So in order to do that, we need to make sure we remember what a main clause and what a subordinate clause is. And if you remember, a subordinate clause is part of a sentence that doesn't make sense on its own. We explored these in the video that we watched last week with the penguins in, if you remember. You might want to look back at it if you can't. Now, there's a series of sentences, clauses down here, and I want you to tell me whether they're main or subordinate clauses. So which ones make sense by themselves? They'll be the main clauses, and which ones don't. So you didn't remember leaving it in there. Yeah, that makes sense by itself, so that's a main clause. The plane lifted off the ground. Yeah, that makes sense by itself. What about gazing into space? That needs a bit more information added, doesn't it? So therefore it's not a main clause, it's a subordinate clause. After a long night. Well, after a long night what? Doesn't make sense by itself, so therefore it's a subordinate clause. Now, the part of the story we're going to write today is the problem section. What might cause your character to get stuck somewhere? I know you've all thought about it and you've got it in your plan. If you remember, my plan is based on the actual story, so we're talking about the fact that the plane ran out of petrol. But you need to look back at your plan from last Thursday and see what problem had you come up with it. Now, if you look at my plan, which I've got here, okay, I don't actually put here that it ran out of petrol until the very last sentence of the paragraph. So that's where your reader actually knows what the problem is, right at the end. Before that in the paragraph, we want to build up the suspense and the tension. We want signs of a problem occurring without giving away exactly what it is. So I'm going to have lots of things like what he can hear, what he can see, and what he can feel, and these elements will build up the problem. Okay, so you need to think about what the first signs are of your problem. And I thought you might want to look here at my little, just going to get rid of that one. You might want to look here at my little model here and think, what does he feel physically? Well, he can actually feel the jerking of the plane as it lurches forward. Okay, he will actually feel the plane lurching forward. And then I'm going to think about what might he hear? Well, he can probably hear the engine coughing and he can probably hear it spluttering. I like that word. Must make sure I spell it correctly. Coughing, spluttering. He might actually hear the exhaust fumes being puffed out. So puffed out smoke, he might be able to hear. And what can he see? Well, from his window, I'm sure he can see billowing smoke. And it's probably quite black. And what does he feel? Well, at first, probably he feels that the whole thing's quite thrilling. And then suddenly he gets a bit of a sinking feeling when he feels the plane lurching. And then when he knows he's run out of petrol, I'm sure he'll be terrified or really scared. So have a little think. You might want to do this on a piece of paper. You might want to pause the video now. Look at your plan and see what your problem is. And think about, before the person knows exactly what the problem is, what can they physically feel? Okay. What can they hear? What can they see? What emotions do they feel at each stage? And then you might be able to use these in your writing. So pause the video and have a little look at writing these down. Okay, welcome back. Now, before you write today's paragraph, you need to read your story so far. I've put mine here, so I've got playing with the same old toys. The boy, who was incredibly bored, shoved them away in his toy cupboard. Searching for something new, he squinted in the darkness as he spotted something hidden at the very back. Excited, his hands grabbed the something with both hands and tugged it out from under the old forgotten pile. It was a plane. Dragging it out from the cupboard, he realised it was in perfect condition, so he decided to take it for a flight. Excited, he ran to get a few more things he might need. When he was sure that he was ready, he loaded everything he needed into the plane, and with no time to lose, he started the engine. At first it coughed and stuttered, but then it came roaring into life and he took off up into the sky like a pro. Whizzing, twisting and turning, he flew up high in the sky where he could see only a few clouds and the sun shining brightly. Inside the cockpit, he hit a strange button that caused the craft to rise up even higher into the vast blue sky. Soon enough, the boy was racing through the stars and gazing down at the earth where it lay many miles below him. He could not remember a time when he'd felt so excited. Through the side window, he could see the moon shimmering gently in the distance. Now today I'm going to follow on from that. I'm ready to put my problem. So first of all, I've got to link to the previous paragraph. So I need to think we've been having an amazing time on this journey, or our character has. So he's had what I would call a thrilling ride, and then suddenly he notices that his plane lurches forward. So how could I write that? Well, what about this sentence? Although he had been having the most thrilling ride, without warning, the plane lurched dramatically forward. So that links. It tells me that we've been having a really good time and then unexpectedly something happened. That really works. My next question would be, was that what was supposed to happen? Because if all of a sudden you're in a car or a train and suddenly it starts throwing itself about, you immediately think, was it meant to do that? So I'm actually going to ask that question. Was it meant to do that? And what's next? Okay, in my plan, it says the plane starts to cough and splutter. So I'm going to start my next sentence. Coughing and spluttering sounds from the engine broke the silence of space around him. However, that was not the worst of it. Next, he's going to notice billowing black smoke. Now, I think that would be from behind him, so I'm going to use a prepositional phrase here. From behind him, billowing black smoke puffed out of the plane's exhaust. And that's a really good example, okay, of a complex sentence. That's my subordinate clause, from behind him, and here I've got billowing black smoke puffed out of the plane's exhaust. That makes sense on its own. And then I need to get over how he's feeling. We know that something was wrong, so he's probably going to be terrified. I certainly would be. And a sinking feeling reached the boy's stomach as he realised the plane was out of fuel. And it's only at that point that I tell the reader what the problem is. So, although he'd been having the most thrilling ride, without warning, the plane lurched dramatically forward. Was it meant to do that? Coughing and spluttering sounds from the engine broke the silence of space around him. However, that was not the worst of it. From behind him, billowing black smoke puffed out of the plane's exhaust. Terrified, a sinking feeling reached the boy's stomach as he realised the plane was out of fuel. Now, two things. Have I used my plan? Well, definitely I have. And secondly, have I got complex sentences in there? Well, I know that I have. So, now it's time for you to write the next part of your story, telling the reader about the main character's problem and using subordinate clauses to write complex sentences. Don't forget, you must have your plan from Thursday out in front of you. That will help you to work out what you're going to say next. And before you start, you might want to think of some great vocabulary that you could add in so that you don't forget to use it when you're actually writing your story. And don't forget, you need to try and think about some complex sentences that you can include. When you've finished, you can look at your checklist. And what I'd like you to do is to go through and underline the subordinate clauses you have used. So, have you also got a variety of sentence types? Have you put your commas in the right place? Remember, between clauses, if you've got a subordinate and a main clause, you will need a comma between them. Did you set yourself a personal target from Monday? If you did, have you made it? And if you have, can you put an example in? And then what do you need to work on tomorrow? So what do you think you could do better tomorrow? Okay, I'm going to leave you there to get on with your writing. I know that Miss Roberts, Miss Bridges and myself are really looking forward to seeing your paragraphs from today. So get writing. I'm looking forward to it. Happy writing, everybody, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. Goodbye.